Hello YouTube, this is Neon. Today I'm going to be talking about matriarchal systems. Get it straight. I'm not a pro, I'm not an expert. Oh hi. Ooh. So, this is more just my thoughts, my impressions, a little bit about what little I know about matriarchal systems, as well as what made me fascinated by them. So, I could tell that historically, most nations, let's say in the modern area, post Columbus and European invasion, genocide, stealing of land, destroying of people and their nations, post that, after that era, most nations are patriarchal. By that I mean the heads of states are men, most of the governors, most of the provincial heads have always been men. The heads of household, men. The children get their last name from their father. So that's what I mean by patriarchy. So matriarchy is sort of the opposite, where one or more of those things is going to be female, where women have essentially a higher status than men. What got me interested and fascinated and curious about matriarchal systems before I even knew what the name was? I didn't even know what the name was, but I was searching and I was curious, but I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know what it was called. I thought, why do men have to rule everything? Why can't women rule? What would society be like if women ruled? To me, the answer is ultimately it wouldn't be that different. And the reason was because as a young man, as a child, I always rooted for the underdog. If we did watch sports, I was raised by a single woman, right? So we didn't watch that much sports. But if we did watch sports, I would always root for the underdog. And the person I rooted for would usually lose. If we were watching the Kung Fu movies, we're talking like 1980s, right? So Kung Fu movies from the 70s and 80s. Or maybe I should say martial arts, because I don't know the difference between Kung Fu, Jiu-Jitsu, Taekwondo, and all these different amazing martial arts. I don't know the difference. So, watching martial arts movies, I remember a lot of them, there would be like a team of good guys that is battling the bad guys, and amongst the good guys, there would be one woman. And they would focus mostly on what the good guys was doing versus what the good gal was doing. And I remember I was always wondering, what about, I want to see her. I want to see her kicking butt. I begin to identify with women more because I know that women are underdogs. So that's what, and they begin to be my heroes more because I realize women take a lot of crap for no reason other than being women. And women of color really, particularly Native American women and African American women, they really have had it hard historically in this country. So as I seen women like these, like Gwendolyn Brooks and Phyllis Wheatley and Ida B. Wells, Harriet Tubman. As I saw these women, as well as Native American women, like the modern day Chief Mankiller, the first Native American woman tribal chief of a major Native American tribe, these became my heroes because it was kind of like, well, if these women can do it, who have all of this bias and this crap thrown at them, then maybe I can do it because I have male privilege. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve to have a better place, but I do. So I thought, since I'm probably not going to have as much crap thrown at me, since due to my genitalia, right, you know, maybe I could do it. So I would say, well, what would it be like if there was, you know, a matriarchal system, not knowing what the word was? And what I would do is say, well, women would be bigger than men. Women would be stronger than men and dominate men. Men would have children. Before you knew it, women will have penises, men will have vaginas, and it will wind up being patriarchy anyway. I couldn't come up with anything. I had heard of when the U.S. essentially, as I understand it, pushed by U.S. businessmen in Hawaii, when the U.S. decided to steal Hawaii from its rightful owners by force, I remember hearing briefly how the Queen had managed to escape the island. Well, no, I do not remember that. I may be confusing that with Madagascar. But I do remember reading how she had led an army against them, and unfortunately it did not succeed. And I was curious. I was like, I guess her husband must have died, and she took over. I didn't even know that there was a such thing as a woman being the ruler. And so this is really a queendom. We're not talking about a kingdom. We are talking about a queendom. And then her oldest daughter would then become the queen. Once that queen abdicated or became old or passed away, then her oldest daughter would become the queen. The exact opposite of patriarchy. So the first true matriarchal society that I learned of was not human. Okay, it is the spotted hyena, which I talked about before. It's amazing. The females, they're bigger, they're stronger, they do still have the babies, but they rule the men in every sense of the word. They rule the males in every sense of the word. Fascinating societies. Later, very recently actually, I learned about Nubia, which was a matriarchal society. I learned about, what else did I learn about? I'll learn about something else, and I'm talking like, what was it? I saw a documentary about, supposedly, it's the only known matriarchal society that exists today. It is in China, and this community is made up of about 40,000 people. Apparently it's been stable. People tend to leave and conform to the outside world, but within that world, the matriarchal society has continued. Women are the only landowners, and children all get their last name from the mother. So those are two of the unique things about that society that really puts women in a position of a better position than men, and in a position of authority and leadership just by virtue of being a woman. It was interesting to watch the interviews because the men seemed to be a little more maybe timid and reserved in how they spoke, and the women spoke with authority. The women wore kind of what appeared to me to be a traditional pants type suit. The women did cross their legs, and they just spoke with authority. It was kind of like, wow, that's pretty cool. I learned about Madagascar, which Madagascar was ruled by women. There was a series of queens. The oldest daughter would take the place of her mother. It was a queendom until 1895, when the French invaded and stole Madagascar from its rightful owners. There are many, I think they call matrilineal societies, where the male has to leave his family and be with his wife's family. So he would move in with his wife's family. They may start their own home, but he lived in the community of his wife. So communities were made up of women who were relatives, their children, their husbands, and all the husbands came from outside. So this gave women a sort of inherent kind of protection that I would say equalized that advantage that we as men have, because we tend to be stronger than women. I found that to be fascinating. There's many Native Americans, and my understanding is particularly along the Appalachian Trail, and I don't know if we're talking east or west, but women were responsible for commerce. Men may do the fur trapping, and I'm not sure if they would prepare the furs and prepare different things that they had made, but it was women who had the sole responsibility of commerce between different peoples along the Appalachian area. I found that to be fascinating. I learned about Nubia very recently. Nubia is a nation that is south of, the capital is Meroe, it is it's the territory of Nubia was along the southern part of the Nile. It was sub-Saharan Africa, but still occupying much of, I think, current day Egypt and then the Sudan. And most of the Nubians were of Sudanese descent. Their claim to fame was that once the world's first sort of known superpower, Egypt, once their pharaohs began to weaken in power, Nubia was one of those nations that was able to break away from them. That's their first claim to fame. The second claim to fame is that as the Romans began to invade and take land and conquer the world, they began to go south. They took, I believe they took most of Egypt, and they began to go south on the Nile. When they hit Nubia, Nubia was able to stop them. That was as far as the Romans could go. And Rome signed a peace treaty with Nubia that essentially acknowledged them as an autonomous nation. When their generals signed the peace treaty, since they couldn't whoop Nubia, it was a black queen who they signed that peace treaty with. That was a society in which a queen ruled her queendom, and then her oldest daughter would take her place. It was that kind of a lineage. In addition, although men, the archaeological findings of Nubia are still being put together. So this documentary was informative, but somewhat limiting. But it implied that men were basically the ones who fought. However, women were the leaders. Women were the generals. Women were the, I don't know what the high commanding positions is in the military, so I'm kind of guessing right here. Why? Because that's what it is. And that's what it do. So I'm thinking lieutenants, generals, and these positions, they were also held by women. Men didn't occupy high positions in the military in Nubian society. I found that to be fascinating. So that's the little that I know about matriarchy. I did go to Wikipedia very quickly. I was offended when the page on Matriarchal Societies basically said, some experts apparently say there's never been a matriarchal society except in very primitive societies. I didn't like that because I knew that's not true. And both that there's never been matriarchal societies, that's not true, and two, that they're primitive. I didn't like either of those because I don't consider those to be factually correct. So I didn't really continue to read, and it gets really confusing since people don't really agree on what is matriarchy. I'm out of time. It's been great. This is a fascinating subject for me, and I'd like to learn a lot more. If any ladies are listening, please forgive me for using the hyena thing. It just, it's a pretty intense matriarchal society. Anyway, so if you like this video, if it was informative, please like, subscribe, share, comment, commercial, recommend my video. Do one or more of those things. Thank you, and best wishes.